What would you do if your family's future depended on one daring decision? Quang and Linda, a couple bound by love but burdened by hardship, dared to risk everything on a bold dream. Quang sets out to master the art of raising bamboo rats, while Linda learns the delicate science of fruit propagation. With trembling hands but determined hearts, they borrow 500 million dong to expand their farm, standing on the thin line between triumph and ruin. Will their gamble bring prosperity or disaster? Subscribe to our channel and join their journey of hope, struggle, and resilience. Quang sat on the wooden veranda of their modest farmhouse, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow across the fields that stretched endlessly before him. His face, worn from years of toil, now carried a spark of something different, an energy born not of fatigue, but of hope. Turning to Linda, who was carefully peeling a basket of sweet potatoes by his side, he spoke with a conviction that made her pause mid-motion. "Linda," he began, his tone earnest yet filled with excitement, "I've been thinking, what if I go and learn how to raise bamboo rats? I've heard it can be a lucrative business. They grow quickly, the demand is high, and people say it's far less risky than the pigs and chickens we've been struggling with. If I succeed, our lives could change. We could finally build the future we've been dreaming of." Linda looked at him, her soft hands resting on the edge of the basket, her brow slightly furrowed. The word bamboo rats sounded so unfamiliar, so strange, almost exotic to her ears. Farming had always been their way of life, yes, but never in this direction. "Bamboo rats?" she repeated, her voice laced with curiosity and doubt. "Quang, you've never raised anything like that before. Isn't it dangerous? What if we fail again?" The memories of past losses weighed heavily on her heart. Chickens that had died from sudden disease, pigs that had consumed more money than they had earned. Each failure had left them more cautious, more wary of grand ideas that demanded investment. But Quang's eyes gleamed with determination, cutting through her fears like sunlight piercing through a cloud. "I know," he admitted, "I've never done this before, but that's why I want to study it seriously. I've read stories of farmers who started with just a few pairs and built entire businesses. If they can do it, why can't we? And Linda, I don't want to stop there. While I take care of the animals, you could learn how to propagate fruit trees and improve the harvest. Imagine it, we wouldn't just have one source of income, but two. Our farm would thrive. Our children would grow up seeing that we dared to dream bigger." Linda listened in silence, her gaze drifting toward the fields where rows of papaya and banana trees swayed gently in the wind. The land had always demanded so much of them, sometimes giving, sometimes taking away. She could not deny that the thought of learning something new frightened her. She had never studied agriculture in a classroom, had never attempted grafting techniques or advanced methods of propagation. The idea of being responsible for nurturing new life in the form of young seedlings, delicate and fragile, seemed overwhelming. And yet, there was something in Quang's voice, a quiet fire that stirred a memory of the days when they were first married, days when everything seemed possible, when they faced hardships hand in hand, not with fear, but with unshakable belief in each other. She sighed softly and set down the basket. "You make it sound so simple," she murmured, her tone caught between worry and admiration. "But what if it's not? What if we don't succeed? We could lose everything, Quang." Her voice trembled, not from weakness, but from love, the kind of love that fears for the other's pain more than for its own. Quang reached for her hand, rough and calloused from years of work, and held it firmly, His voice lowered, steady and reassuring. "Linda, we've already lost before, haven't we? And yet, we're still here, still standing, still fighting. I believe in us. This time, we'll prepare carefully, we'll study, we'll plan, and we'll give it everything we have. Maybe it won't be easy, but nothing worthwhile ever is." For a long moment, silence lingered between them, broken only by the distant chirping of crickets and the rustling of the leaves in the warm evening air. Linda felt the weight of his words settling in her heart. She saw not just a man dreaming of wealth, but a husband desperate to carve a better path for their family. A man unwilling to let poverty define their destiny. And though her fear did not disappear, it softened, making room for a fragile yet undeniable seed of hope. Linda's silence lingered even as the twilight deepened, the golden light giving way to hues of indigo across the sky. She turned Quang's words over and over in her mind. Like a fragile stone, she wasn't sure whether to keep or throw away. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled with honesty. "Quang," she said softly, "I'm not afraid of hard work. You know that. But I've never done anything like this before. Raising new plants, learning to graft and propagate. It sounds so complicated. What if I make mistakes? What if I ruin everything?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, and in her eyes was not defiance, but the quiet, gnawing fear of stepping into the unknown. Quang shifted closer, his hand still holding hers, as though he could anchor her uncertainty. His gaze carried both tenderness and unshakable resolve. "Linda, mistakes will happen. That's how we learn. You've managed this land for years. You know how the soil breathes, how the seasons change. You've cared for every tree here like it was a child. Believe me when I say you already have the heart of a farmer who can do more. All you need now is to learn the techniques. Once you do, you'll be unstoppable." His words were warm, reassuring, but they were also deliberate, chosen to spark courage where hesitation had built its walls. The conversation stretched long into the evening, until the stars scattered themselves across the vast sky. Ideas were exchanged, questions raised, fears confessed, and slowly something began to take shape between them. Not just a plan, but a vision of a future brighter than the struggles they had endured. Still, the looming obstacle was one neither could ignore: money. Expanding into bamboo rat farming and advanced tree propagation would demand more than they had ever owned. Their savings, carefully tucked away after seasons of scrimping, amounted to barely a fraction of what they would need. It was Linda who voiced the truth first, her tone hesitant. "Even if we dare to try, how will we afford it? The cages, the feed, the seedlings, the training courses, it all costs money we don't have." She looked at him as though hoping he might have some hidden answer. Quang's silence was thoughtful, his jaw tight as he stared into the darkness beyond their porch. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "We'll borrow," he said simply. "From my brother, from my cousin, and if that's not enough, from the bank. I've already asked around and I heard they give loans to small farms. If we combine both, we could raise about 500 million dong. It will be enough to build the foundations of everything we dream of." Linda's breath caught at the figure, her heart lurching at the weight of it. 500 million. The number echoed in her mind like a drumbeat, both thrilling and terrifying. She had seen neighbors borrow less and still lose everything when their ventures failed. Her lips parted, but words faltered before they could form. The enormity of the risk pressed down on her chest, but so did the enormity of what might be gained. Quang saw the conflict etched on her face and tightened his grip on her hand. "I know it's a lot, and yes, the risk is real, but Linda, what's the alternative?
To keep living as we have, scraping by, watching our dreams slip further away each season? We've been brave before, but this time we'll be smarter. We'll go step by step. I'll study everything about the bamboo rats, how to care for them, how to breed them, how to sell them. You'll learn from the Agricultural Center about propagation. Together, we'll double our chances. We won't just rely on luck. We'll rely on knowledge, effort, and each other. Linda's chest rose and fell, her thoughts tumbling in every direction. She wanted to tell him that she was too afraid, that she wasn't ready, that the world they lived in was too cruel to reward dreamers. But when she met his gaze, she saw not a reckless man, but the same partner who had carried her through floods, through sickness, through hunger. He had never once let go of her hand in the storms of life. Could she now refuse to hold on to his in this storm of ambition? Her eyes softened, her resistance melting into something quieter, more vulnerable. "If we do this," she whispered, "we must do it together. No secrets, no hiding failures, no blaming. Just us, side by side, no matter what happens." Quang's answering smile was not triumphant, but tender, filled with gratitude. "Always together," he promised, his voice steady. And in that moment, beneath the endless sky, the decision was made. Not in contracts or numbers, but in the quiet vow of two souls daring to stake everything on love, trust, and a fragile dream of prosperity.
The decision hung between them like an invisible bond, fragile yet unbreakable. Days later, with papers signed and promises made, the 500 million dong was no longer just a distant idea. It sat in their account, heavy with possibility. Quang could almost feel its weight every time he looked at the ledger, every time he pictured the cages for the bamboo rats and the rows of seedlings that Linda would nurture. Money, once scarce and elusive, now felt like a powerful river rushing through their hands. But with that river came a current strong enough to sweep them away if they misstepped. The first morning after securing the loan, Quang rose before dawn. He stood by the window, watching as the first light crept over the fields, painting the sky with strokes of orange and pale pink. His chest swelled with determination, but also with the gnawing unease that whispered of all that could go wrong. 500 million, he murmured under his breath, tasting the number on his tongue as though it were both sweet and bitter. Behind him, Linda stirred, her hair tumbling softly across her pillow. She opened her eyes and caught the distant look on his face. "You're worried," she said quietly, pushing herself upright. Quang turned, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "A little. It's only natural. We're gambling everything." Her gaze lingered on him, tender yet sharp. "Then let's make sure it's not a gamble. Let's make sure it's a plan." She reached for his hand and he took it, feeling the warmth of her steadying presence. In that moment, Linda was no longer the hesitant wife, afraid of mistakes. She was the partner he had always relied on, ready to stand beside him on the edge of this great unknown. The following weeks blurred into a rhythm of preparation. Quang threw himself into research, spending long hours poring over guidebooks, attending training sessions, and listening to experienced farmers who spoke of both success and ruin. He scribbled notes until his calloused fingers cramped, determined to absorb every lesson. Meanwhile, Linda made regular trips to the Agricultural Extension Center, where she learned the delicate art of grafting mango trees, layering guavas, and propagating papayas. Her hands, once only familiar with planting and watering, now trembled as she held fragile cuttings, coaxing them to grow. Yet despite their tireless efforts, unease never left them entirely. At night, when the farm lay quiet and the only sounds were the chirping of insects and the distant croak of frogs, doubts crept back into their minds. Linda would sometimes lie awake staring at the dark ceiling, the question pressing against her chest. What if we fail again? What if this dream becomes another scar? She would turn her head and find Quang already awake, his body tense, his mind clearly walking down the same road of uncertainty. One evening, as the wind howled outside and rain pattered softly on the tin roof, Linda finally gave voice to the thought that haunted her. "Quang," she whispered, "do you ever wonder if we've made a mistake? If we'll end up with nothing but debts we cannot repay?" Quang was silent for a long time, listening to the storm, his hand resting over hers. Then, in a voice low but steady, he said, "Yes, I wonder. Every day. But I also wonder, what if we succeed? What if this is the beginning of everything we've worked for? I'd rather fight for that chance than spend the rest of my life regretting that we never tried." His words sank into her heart, both terrifying and comforting. She realized then that their journey was not about certainty, but about courage. The courage to risk, to hope, to step forward even when the ground beneath their feet trembled. As the days passed, they poured their borrowed fortune into the dream. Wooden cages lined one corner of the farm, each prepared for the new bamboo rats they would soon acquire. Saplings and cuttings filled another, fragile green promises of fruit that might one day bear abundance. The farm, once weary and bare, began to hum with the quiet anticipation of rebirth. And yet, hovering in the air like a shadow, the question refused to disappear. Would their gamble lead them into the light of prosperity or drag them deeper into the darkness of debt? Only time, with its cruel patience, would answer. For now, Quang and Linda held on to each other, standing on the knife's edge between triumph and ruin.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tử Ninda Review. Vậy là trong tập phim ngày hôm nay thì Quang và Ninda đã quyết định là sẽ đầu tư và mở rộng trang trại với quy mô lớn hơn và chuyên nghiệp hơn. Điều đặc biệt là cả Quang và Ninda bây giờ đang không có tiền thì Quang có bàn với Ninda là sẽ thế chấp trang trại của Ninda để lấy số tiền đó để đem đi đầu tư. Liệu rằng quyết định này của họ có sáng suốt hay không, họ có thành công hay không hay là thất bại, tất cả sẽ được hé lộ vào các tập tiếp theo. Các bạn hãy bấm vào nút đăng ký kênh để nhận được thông báo mới nhất về tập phim sẽ được phát sóng hàng ngày trên kênh Lý Tử Ninda Review nha. Cảm ơn các bạn vì đã luôn dành tình cảm thật nhiều cho kênh của mình. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại các bạn. Bye bye.